a quorum, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, we will be led today in the pledge by Commissioner Cessna. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you have given us. Please help safeguard the first responders and military personnel that serve to protect us. Please watch over us and guide us with your wisdom during our meeting and help us to lead and move our community forward in a positive direction. In this name we pray, amen.
Amen. Was there any additions or corrections to the minutes for the October 1st meeting? Anybody see anything? Not, they stand approved as submitted. At this time, we have public comment for anyone in the audience that would like to address the City Commission. If you're not on the agenda, if it's an agenda item, we ask that you wait and speak then. Is there anybody that wants to speak on any other items? Okay, just come before the, in front. State your name, please.
Hello, my name is Bernie Reitz. I'm a resident of Garden City,
Okay.
and I am here to ask, I am volunteering to help Kansas Honor Flight raise funds so the veterans of Kansas who served during World War II, Korean War, and the Vietnam War can be thanked for defending our great country. I would like to collect aluminum cans to be recycled with the funds received being sent to Kansas Honor Flight. There are already 18 collection sites in place in eastern Kansas. In order to do this, I need a place with a recycle bin where those willing to recycle cans for veterans can help Kansas Honor Flight. I have checked with several Garden City establishments. Most recycle scrap metal companies and the Garden City Recycling Center, and have a commitment for the American Legion to allow the use of their back courtyard for collection. Once I have a container or a cage trailer, we could start collecting the cans. In the meantime, I would like to request the City of Garden City Recycle Center for funds from their aluminum can recycling for approximately 6 months to a year, or until I can get a recycle center set up for the recycling bin. I understand the city does not make a large profit or huge profit from the recycling center, but I am asking on behalf of the veterans. There are currently around 800 Kansas veterans on the waiting list for this trip to Washington, D.C. to see their respective war memorials, which is funded by the grateful citizens of Kansas as a way to thank the veterans for their service. Kansas Honor Flight will reach their goal of transporting slightly over 400 Kansas veterans in 2019 at a cost of $800 per veteran. The funds needed for just this year is $320,000. Fortunately, after 11 years of transporting veterans, the generosity of Kansas citizens continues. I am requesting the City of Garden City to express their appreciation and generosity also. I have found an appropriate place to place the container bin, but in the meantime, I hope you will consider my request to donate your aluminum can collection from the Recycle Center for up to a year, 6 months to a year, to help our local veterans make this trip. Anything the city can do would be appreciated. Thank you for your time. And I have copies here for you
Okay.
to look at.
Thank you. Thanks for helping out with this program.
Oh, I'll keep one of them. And then here's the flyers too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can take that under advisement and bring it up at a future meeting.
Connect her with Sam.
Anyone else? All right.
Okay.
Anyone else in the audience that wanted to speak? Okay. Number 6A.
Item 6A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve free vehicle admission to Lee Richardson Zoo for active military and veterans, November 9th, 10th, and 11th, 2019.
Okay.
I'll make the motion, we approve the request for the free drive-through admission as proposed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the free admission to Lee Richardson Zoo for active military and veterans on November 9th, 10th, and 11th, 2019. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item B, the governing body is asked to consider and allow the mayor to approve a request from the Finney County Opioid Task Force to proclaim October 20th through 26th, 2019 as Drug Take Back Week in Garden City, Kansas. And do we have anybody here that wants to speak to that issue?
Yeah.
I guess I'll do it since I wrote the proclamation. So we're asking the city to proclaim it as Drug Take Back Week. We have several different activities planned for next week. The county is going to be proclaiming it, hopefully Drug Take Back Week as well next Monday. I can't remember what was on Tuesday. Oh, Tuesday we have our coalition meeting where Genesis will be talking a lot about their opioid treatment resources. Thursday, we'll have a ribbon cutting for the pharmacy at Sienna, and they also have a new MedSafe box there for appropriate disposal of medication. We'll have information out at parent-teacher conferences on Thursday and Friday as well. And then Saturday, Garden City Police Department and Walmart will be hosting a Drug Take Back Day at Walmart from 10 to 2, too. So we have quite a week of activities.
I move that
Thank
we
you.
approve the proclamation.
There's- It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proclamation for Drug Take Back Week. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Beth, was there an event at which you wanted the mayor to read the proclamation, or would you like to do that now?
He can do it now.
Okay, and Mayor, if you want to join her and anybody else that wants to join.
Lisa from
While I read it,
Lisa,
whereas a group
Callie,
of concerned
Keith.
organizations have come together to create a Finney County opioid task force consisting of members of the Finney County, St. Catherine Hospital, Genesis Family Health, Compass Behavioral Health, USD 457, Live Well Finney County, and the City of Garden City. This group is working together to collaboratively fight the opioid epidemic in Finney County. And whereas Garden City has 3 options for residents to safely, conveniently, and responsibly dispose of expired or unused prescription medications, MedSafe boxes are located at the Finney County Law Enforcement Center, St. Catherine Hospital Emergency Department, and Sienna Medical Clinic Pharmacy. And whereas too often prescription medications find their way into the wrong hands, and drug take-back programs address a crucial public safety and public health service. And now, therefore, I, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor of the City of Garden City, do hereby proclaim October 20th through 26th, 2019 as Drug Take-Back Week in Garden City, and urge all citizens to properly dispose of any unused or expired medications at any one of Garden City's medication disposal boxes. Signed and sealed this 15th day of October 2019, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor. Yeah, sure. Item C, the governing body is asked to consider and allow the mayor to proclaim,
Kids
Nope.
start.
I started reading another one, sorry about that. Item C, the governing body is asked to consider and allow the mayor to approve a request from the Kansas Children's Service League to proclaim the month of October 2019 as Head Start Awareness Month in Garden City, Kansas.
Move that we approve the proclamation. I'll second.
Is there, been moved and seconded that we approve the proclamation of Head Start Awareness Month. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
And
carried.
do we have anybody here that would like to speak to Head Start Awareness Month?
All right.
I just wanted to stand before the commission and thank you guys for even considering acknowledging October as Head Start Awareness Month. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the programs that we offer, and how we're mitigating child abuse and neglect across the state. But within the 10 counties that we serve, specifically Finney County, we have been able to move mountains for a lot of families. And October allows us an opportunity to raise awareness for all that we do and the services that we provide to our families. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Is there an event at which you'd like the mayor to read this? Or would you like to do that here?
Here is.
Okay, that'd be great. I can read that for you, Mayor. Whereas established in 1965, Head Start is a nationally federally funded early childhood development program that serves children and families and whose purpose is to help children achieve their full potential. And whereas Head Start provides a comprehensive health, nutritional, educational, social services, family and community development, and meaningful parent involvement. And whereas Head Start focuses on children's language development, early literacy, social skills, and giving their parents the skills to become their child's first and best teacher. And whereas Head Start is committed to the development of each child and provides preventative and early intervention services to children and families regardless of their economic status. And whereas City of Garden City Commissioners recognize that the needs of children and families in Garden City must become a top priority for future decision makers by investing financial resources and talent in the prevention of health and mental health and educational disabilities, child abuse and neglect, and family dysfunction. Now, therefore, I, Dan Fankhauser, Mayor of the City of Garden City, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as Head Start Awareness Month. Signed and sealed this 15th day of October 2019.
Now we want to do, Timmy.
Marie and Rosie, are you expecting more people from the neighborhood? Would you like us to move up your item? I know Beth's here for that too.
Amy is coming, but she said she would be 1:15 or so.
Okay, we can wait. Yeah, we'll move forward then. Item 7A, Director of Aviation Powell will provide a report on the annual Federal Aviation Administration Certificate Inspection.
Good afternoon. So the theme of this inspection was markings, markings, and more markings, unfortunately. Matt, if you could go to the actual letter, the attachment. Okay,
There we go.
so going through there, we did have several discrepancies on markings. The first three are, the first one, I'm sorry, is a runway edge marking for runway 1735, basically at the north end and the south end. Here it looks awful. This is kind of where all the snow piles up on the west edge of the runway. So there's about 100 feet on the north side and 100 feet on the south side that look like this. The rest of the edge marking is good and intact. We were hoping to try to wait till next year, fiscal year 2020, for our AIP project that will remove all the markings on both runways and a couple taxiways and then repaint them, because what we do is basically keep applying paint to these layers and then they chip off, and we were hopeful that we could kind of skip painting these areas before the inspection, since a major project that's estimated at $2.2 million next year. 95% of that is paid from the federal government and 5% of the city, but that's how expensive it is to remove markings and then repaint them. So we were hopeful that we could get that possibly done in the spring. However, the inspector did not think it was in compliance. So therefore, we were wrote up for that, and it does look pretty awful, but we've repainted it in these areas, so we are in compliance now. The next 3 markings, if you keep going down. So these are runway hold position markings, and we actually painted these in July. However, if you can see by the picture, you can kind of see the glass beads in the white areas. They're spotty. We painted on a very hot, windy day, and the beads didn't adhere to the paint as we like, and it is pretty patchy, so therefore it's not in compliance. So the next 3 markings were kind of the same scenario. Of those, we have repainted those on a calm, day, and have the beads that
Not
are
too many of
constantly on the yellow, so it has a reflectivity now. So we're in compliance with that. If you keep going. The next one is a center lead line marking. The inspector determined that it was faded. And then in the picture, you can also see the glass beads are not consistent. You can see them reflecting in that picture. However, it wasn't consistent enough to meet spec. So we have also repainted that and are in compliance. And then the last marking one, again, it's a center lead line onto the end of runway 35. And you can see the very first of that, it's not very white or reflective. And then going past the curve, you have the reflectivity. So we've repainted that and applied beads correctly, and that is now in compliance as well. There was another issue with the aircraft firefighting, the ARF equipment that is in the ARF station. It had expired the shelf life. However, the firefighter at the time removed it, and he did have his bunker gear, and Chief Collins is here too if he wants to elaborate on that more. The firefighter did have his bunker gear, which was in compliance, so therefore this issue's automatically been resolved, and the fire department's removed all the expired equipment out of the ARF station. Other than that, everything's been corrected, and we are in compliance now.
Do they come back and
No,
re-inspect? or-
they can, but we just send pictures verifying that we complied with all the marking updates.
Okay.
Michelle, what was the cost to do just these fixes?
These were we had everything on hand already, all the paint. We do quite a bit of painting during the summer months, so it was more time. An estimate, probably with the paint and the glass beads, about $250, and then time. These were pretty easy, since we only were doing the yellow paint and then the glass beads, and this we were able to accomplish with our paint truck, so it was pretty fast. But next year, like I said, all the markings on both runways will be completely removed, painted, and then a couple of taxiways will be removed markings and then repainted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, great report overall, just that's all, that was the problem. So
Yeah,
that's pretty
nothing
impressive.
substantial, but it's still,
Yeah, that's great.
our staff works very hard to make sure that we make everything A+ out there, and we had a little ding, so
They
we're
always
good now.
want to take the worst pictures,
Yes, yeah. And how the glass beads are actually in there, some are pretty shiny, some aren't, so, it's all perspective of the inspector as well.
Right.
Yep. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, and good job. The second item there, item B, isn't a staff presentation today. It's end of season report. If you've got questions on that, you can ask Jennifer. I think that makes us ready for item C. Finance Director Hitz is going to present the annual Star Bond report on the Sports of the World project, and we've submitted this to the Department of Commerce. So this is the first year for that. She'll kind of tell you all about what this report is and what we reported to Commerce this year.
Good afternoon. As Matt said, this will be an annual report that goes to the Department of Commerce, and it gives the update on the Sports of the World complex. In December of 2014, the Department of Commerce approved the eligible area for the Star Bond District. And then in March of 2019, we did issue $29,540,000 in Star Bonds. So we have to account to the Department of Commerce every year on how we have spent this money and how the sales tax is coming in on the Star Bond District. The status of the project, I think all of you, if you've driven out there, you've seen some dirt moving around, but actually the Status of the project here shows the facilities that will be going into the Star Bond project. This is exactly the way it reads in the development agreement. There will be a website set up down below here. The Sports of the World will be setting up their own website, so you can keep updated on that. The second page of the report shows the expenditures that have gone out from the Star Bond revenues. We have spent total $3,452,631, mainly in land purchase and soft costs, which are architectural fees. Down below, we're showing basically what year we think most of the project will be done. They hope to open up probably in the spring or summer of 2021. The next page shows the sales tax revenue collected to date. This has been a kind of an interesting part of this project. When this district gets formed, the state of Kansas Department of Revenue sends out a notice that they are in this district and they are to file a certain sort of tax return. Well, the sales tax did not change, and so a lot of people really didn't pay attention to it because there was no change in the tax. But you do have to report on the correct form in order to get the money from the Star Bond district to go into this district. So the city and the Department of Revenue have been comparing receipts every month. And as you can see in September, on this report, there was a huge amount coming into the Star Bond district. So they're going back to April of 2019 and correcting all of the previous receipts that have come in and out. So we're getting close to meeting the portion that the city has for the baseline. Every year, our baseline will be $310,367. Once that has been received by the city of Garden City, the difference goes, then it stays with the state of Kansas in a special account to pay for the debt. So since we only started this in April of this year, we probably will meet this hopefully next month or November, and also the same way with the state. There is a small debt payment that's due in December, basically just interest on the revenue bonds. So that amount should be met. So that kind of takes care of the use of the sales tax revenue down below. On the last page, we're just showing the balance that's left to be paid out with the Star Bonds. We still have $21,947,000. The way this works too, I don't know if we've actually discussed this with you, but every time the developer has a drawdown, we fill out the paperwork for our files. The city representatives, which is Matt and myself, meet with the two members of the developer team. We review the invoices to make sure they're all eligible costs, and then we sign off on it, and then it goes to the Department, Commerce Bank's Trust Department. They are the actual ones that issue the check to the developer. They are in charge of keeping track of all of our funds. They have them invested as need be. So they play a big part in this process also. There's one more item that we have to do to meet the requirements of the Star Bond, and that's to have an audit. It can be in conjunction with our annual audit, so they will accept that. Is there any questions that I can answer on this type of reporting? It's all
Looks
brand
good.
new to us.
Yeah.
Looks
Thank
good.
you, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Items D through K are staff presentation, or I'm sorry, staff reports with the exception of the Cox channel lineup that's part of what they're required to submit to us under their franchise agreement. Are there any questions on the staff reports?
The only one I had a question on was on item D with the GCPD organizational study action. I know that the cell phone, I was curious if they had come up with anything on, I know that they wanted you to get away from individual cell phones and have department cell phones. And I wondered if that had made any progress on that one.
Yeah, it's made some great progress. I've reached out to other chiefs in the Kansas Association of Chiefs and across the state, and some of the officers assigned to the task have followed up some research, and now they've submitted to legal for a legal opinion on what we should do.
What you should purchase or how you should handle the
Right.
money? Okay.
Some of the agencies I've checked with still do it the way we do it. Some of the agencies checked with, command staff have cell phones that are pursuant to a stipend, while the line officers have the department-owned phones. So we're researching. We've gotten some bids from local vendors as well as we would go to a department.
Is that included in your budget, Chief, or is it something you'd have to, it would have to be a budget item for future?
Really
If you
don't.
purchase them this way.
We don't know. It may be offset by the stipends. That's still part of the waiting to see if we have to go department-wide or split, or what the legal opinion's going to be.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Chief.
You'll see under item 8, meetings of note, it's a pretty full schedule. A reminder that tomorrow morning is the State of the City breakfast. Mayor's,
We're gonna be stating.
that's right. Protect your voice, don't talk about it on
Right. Practice. Practice makes
Practice,
perfect.
yeah.
If there aren't any questions on, if you need to RSVP for any of those, please do that with Sealand. And I think we're ready for item 9A. It's the appropriation ordinance. If approved, it would be ordinance number 2493-2019A.
I make a motion, we approve 2493-2019A.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the appropriations ordinance 2493-2019A. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve an ordinance regarding regulations and standards for small cell facilities in Garden City, Kansas. If approved, it would be ordinance number 2853-2019. Mike?
Mike?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. This ordinance that's before you today is an additional chapter to the City Code, Chapter 27. If you approve it, this will be the regulations and standards for small cell facilities development. Just really quick, what the small cell development are as the electronic world moves into 5G or even higher at some point in time, it needs smaller cell locations posted to make that work just like it's supposed to work. In some communities already across the country and in eastern Kansas, numerous small cell facilities have been installed. Therefore, we met with several people to determine what's the best place for the city to be in, and it was determined that we needed a new chapter to help guide these. As Garden City desires, I'll kind of get into my memo here, that we desire to encourage wireless infrastructure investment by providing fair and predictable process for the development of these small cell facilities, while enabling Garden City to promote the management of the rights-of-way in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare. Senate Bill 68 was passed last year by the Kansas legislature, which enacted laws that say that you can't really discriminate against someone to put in a small cell just if they don't have a franchise agreement. So in order to make sure that we complied with that, and the FCC come out with some new rules and regulations last year that we want to make sure we were in compliance with that too. So what is proposed here in this ordinance, this new chapter, is a combination of allowing us to meet both of those requirements. I'll just kind of go through this real quick. The purpose of the intent of the chapter is provide a uniform and comprehensive set of regulations and standards for the permitting, development, co-location, installation, design, operation, and maintenance of small cell facilities in Garden City. These regulations are intended to prescribe clear and reasonable criteria to assess and process applications in a consistent and expeditious manner while reducing the impacts associated with small cell facilities. The chapter provides necessary standards to preserve and promote harmonious land uses in the public right-of-way in the city, promote and protect public health and safety, community welfare, visual resources, and the aesthetic quality of the city consistent with the goals and objectives of the policies that are set by the city. It will provide an orderly and managed and efficient development of these small cell facilities and encourage more efficient technology to occur in Garden City. It's not intended to, nor it will be interpreted to be or applied to prohibit or effectively prohibit any personal wireless service provider's ability to provide personal wire services. To prohibit or effectively prohibit any entity's ability to provide any interstate or intrastate telecommunications services subject to any competitively neutral and non-discriminatory rules and regulations of the right-of-way. That's really just taken right out of the KC, out of the FCC.
You didn't make that up?
No. Those are not my words. Randy, I think, had some help with that part.
Yes.
This has been reviewed, obviously, by the city attorney with help with some outside folks that specialize in this area. We've researched other communities in Kansas to make sure we're not out of whack. You know, I won't go through the rest of it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Everything is in the ordinance and in the attachment. What we did do is we did share this with Cox Communications, the final draft, and asked them for any input they had. They found no issues, no objections whatsoever. They felt it was consistent with some other communities in Kansas have done, and they're supportive of that. The only financial impact will be as if there's cost associated with staff to develop these permits, et cetera, and any revenue that will be generated from small cell folks will go into the general fund account just like the franchise agreements do. So, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We recommend that you would approve Chapter 27 as a code of ordinances, or you can refuse that, but we would recommend that you approve it.
I make a motion, we
Question?
approve ordinance 2853-2019.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2853-2019 regarding Code Chapter 27, Small Cell Facility Standards and Requirements. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Item 10B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve a resolution of intent to issue economic development revenue bonds for Sports of the World development, a multi-sports complex at 900 LaRue Row. If approved, it would be resolution number 2828-2019. Melinda.
The City of Garden City and GC Investments entered into a development agreement relating to the Garden City Star Bond Project District, which was signed December 20th of 2018. Article 5 of this agreement discusses project financing of the Sports of the World project. In section 5.7 specifically, it addresses in the agreement that the developer may use industrial revenue bond financing in order to obtain an exemption from applicable retail sales taxes on construction materials, equipment, and furnishings for portions of the project paid and reimbursed from Star Bond proceeds. This section also acknowledges that the city will not provide an abatement of ad valorem taxes as levied on the project.
Is there a time limit on that? Time limit?
It will be, it gets renewed every year. It's an annual exemption. They have to reapply every year.
Every year.
They also have to provide all of the vendors that they're going to be using on the project with the application. And so, and that's with the state of Kansas.
Yeah, you have to have a tax exempt number
Right.
to your vendors. Yeah.
Mhm.
I make a motion, we approve resolution 2828-2019.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 2828-2019 for the economic development revenue bonds for the Star Bond project. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9A, the governing body is asked to consider repairing a pillar on private property which marks the east end of Gillespie Drive. I'll read this item. At your September 3rd regular meeting, the governing body considered an agenda item that stemmed primarily from the damage to the pillar which sits on private property Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll start over. At the September 3rd regular meeting, the governing body considered an agenda item that stemmed primarily from damage to the pillar, which sits on private property and marks the east end of Gillespie Place. Other concerns had arisen from some lack of clarity on private property lines, which raised the question of the private or public status of the street infrastructure. The governing body then directed staff at that meeting to bring back the item to an October 2019 meeting. Rick and Rosie Swick and Ron and Marie Osterber have provided the attached letter requesting the governing body ask the attorney to draw up documents stating that Gillespie Place be an official city street and that the city assume repair and upkeep of the pillars marking the east and west ends of the street. So your alternatives are that were shown before in September to repair Gillespie pillar at cost not to exceed $3,000. That was based on I think a quote that we may have received prior to September 3rd. Authorizing staff to procure the work in accordance with city purchasing policy and directing city staff or the city attorney to work with the neighborhood to develop terms for dedicating or declaring public rights-of-way. And kind of any combination of doing or not doing those two things is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our request is that you provide us in the neighborhood some direction, and I know Marie and Rosie probably have some words they'd like to share.
Okay, all right, I'm Rosie Swick. I just wanted to start by saying thank you for the consideration of our letter that we brought in. And thank you for giving us a little time to research and do a little bit of moving forward with finding things on deeds and abstracts and whatnot, just because we're all we've got a lot of question ourselves too as to the street being public or private or what to do about the pillar and all. So speaking for myself and the research that I have done, I have gone and looked through a lot of documents beginning in the early 1900s to the 30s, clear to now. And as far as the dedication of the street maybe becoming, or in my opinion, staying public as it's been used for a long time, I didn't find anything anywhere that specifically stated that the street was private or officially that it was public. There are lots of different pieces of information out there that do show that there have been different deeds of neighbors on the street that do show that Gillespie Place, it's been named Gillespie Drive, Gillespie Street, all this, but it includes a lot of that being in public use and different dedications. And so I guess for me, I would like the pillar to be repaired. We do, I think, as a whole in the neighborhood, enjoy the history that has there. So I don't know what your feelings are on that. So with my husband, we are in favor of alternative 1 to repair that, and then seeing if we can get together maybe to find a way to, dedicate the street to public if it is not already done. So.
Do you know, have you had your property surveyed?
Yes.
Is it to the middle of the street or is it to your property line?
No, ours is just a property line.
Property line.
And the question that Matt had mentioned about, there was a question, in our property, there was a little strip that was in our specific property that was used at one time as an alley. There was a dumpster there. But that actually was our property. So, and it is in our deed, warranty deed. And I think we did have that surveyed and it's recorded now with the Register of Deeds just to, have that in note, so.
That it's a right of way?
That is our private property, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's on our property. And so it is just marked just to the perimeters of our, land. It doesn't show anything further into the street, on our side of the street anyway, so, yeah.
Are the pillars on both sides, or are they on and I can't remember where they're at,
Yeah, there's
Center
two,
Street.
yeah, on Center Street and on Evans. Now,
So there's four
The
pillars?
ones that are, yes.
Okay.
And there is a plaque that's marked
Yep,
on
I've seen
there.
one of them.
And it is marked private, but there is a question as to, like, who actually put that on there. And I don't know of any, I didn't find any, so maybe if any of you have something, but I didn't find any information that proves that that actually was, documented private, or if someone just put that on there back in the day when that's what they wanted. I don't know. So yeah, the two on the end on the Evans are off of the street a little ways, so they don't block the view for one, and they're, in a pretty good position in my opinion. But on the ones on Center Street, it's been hit before, and they probably will get hit again. There's one also that there is a fire hydrant right beside it as well. So, I just don't know what you want to do with those, or what your consideration is on that.
We don't have any idea who did it, right?
No. Mm-mm.
It happened at night or something.
Yeah, I don't know really.
know that.
Yeah.
I think that the men in the neighborhood, including Ron, assumed that it was probably one of the lawnmower guys with his trailer, and when he came around the corner, his trailer caught the pillar because it's just
It
rotated.
just shifted,
It
yeah.
wasn't
Mhm.
not there. But nobody knows.
So we don't, and I don't know how that works either, when things, I know with sidewalks, a lot of times property owners are responsible, for taking part of that. I don't know, I don't even know that neighbor yet. He's new to the neighborhood, and so I don't know where that lands either, if that's actually sitting on his property, or if therefore it's city property. There's just a lot of questions, so,
Well, as close as it is to the street,
Yeah.
I imagine it's on city property.
Mhm.
Usually most streets there's 10 foot between the curb and the property line, but there, I think that street's a little narrower, so
Yeah.
I'm not
Mhm.
sure. But
So as far as the historical value, is it a value to the neighborhood? I'm curious about how the neighbors have talked about
and we
that.
did have a neighborhood meeting, and we had a lot of conversation about different things that could happen with that. Do we keep the pillars? Do we ask for that? Or should we just have them removed? Could they be moved back to be more secure? Lots of things. But ultimately, just because that is a historical street, just goes back dated a ways, that, we just like that idea of it. But I don't really
yeah, it
know
is
if they
real
need to be
close.
removed or not.
It's real close to.
It is.
And if you cut that corner with a trailer,
Yeah.
I can see how that could happen. Has anybody seen his trailer? 'Cause, his
Oh, yeah,
insurance
no.
would probably
Yeah.
pay for it.
I
What?
looked at it the other day and I didn't see any damage on it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I didn't want to be like
He got it fixed in a hurry.
looking at
Yeah.
it, but I didn't notice any damage.
You'd notice it, I think.
Yeah.
I know for some street signs, they're a little bit easier to see than those are. And are there also street signs?
Yes, there are
Okay, so
marked
they're-
street signs, and, in some of the research that we found too, I'm not sure if that was in the 60s or the 80s, but that when the streets were paved, and the curbs went in and things like that, so that kind of brings us to wonder, is there documentation as far as that been already a public street? So that, I don't know if that's when the street signs went in officially also, I don't know.
Matt, did you say that somebody tried to turn it back and it won't turn? Or did I just make that up?
I'm not gonna tell you, you just made it up. Our guys went by to see if there was some imminent risk of it falling over, because when you look at it, it's definitely
right.
turned on its axis and kind of looks like it's gonna go at any moment, but they couldn't move it, and it probably shouldn't stay like that forever, but it's not an imminent risk right now.
But how do you, to fix it, you just
And
gotta tear it
apart, rebuild
down
it, yeah.
and start over.
Yeah, it's the base of it that's mostly crumbled,
Yeah.
where it just shifted it completely, so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I don't know.
And I think that was exactly how it broke last time, too,
Is
pretty
it,
much.
yeah. And where we are not a neighborhood association, there never has been one that I know of in place. I know, speaking for myself, and I think most everyone, we don't really feel like we want to do that either, and going in and buying our house just 4 years ago there, we didn't we didn't know anything about it being a private or any, we just assumed that it just came public
Public
with, and we
street.
just bought, yeah. So it is, leave a lot of questions, so,
Well, it's definitely something that has been there as long as I've been part of this community, and it's, I don't know. We don't really have funds for something like this. It just come out of the what, street department,
It says general fund.
or general fund, or?
Is there an avenue where you can establish a district, like a property tax district that would go into a fund? Such because like you said, it's gonna happen again at some point.
Oh, you mean like special
Yeah.
tax?
Yeah, I
So
mean, I don't remember what the
set up.
alphabet soup one, it's not a TIF, but I mean, something where you can establish a levy that they would self-impose on the Gillespie properties that would go into a fund to maintain and repair.
I've set up some of those, and you have to have all, that whole area surveyed, and that's a pretty lengthy process. It isn't as easy as you might think.
I know, part of the street is, platted, part of it isn't, there's been surveys and some haven't, so, I mean, I don't know if that's something also that might be considered that it might benefit the city as us as well, to have that done, and I don't, what your recommendation is on, getting together to work, with the planning on that as well.
So I'm curious, and so if we moved this out of the private and made it, public and a city street, how would then we be responsible from then on for the maintenance of those?
Yes.
Wait,
If it's in the right of way and we accept the dedication of the private property, we would be responsible.
Who's been maintaining this road?
The city of Garden City.
What evidence do we have that it's private road?
We don't have
No,
evidence that
no,
it's
there
public
isn't.
road.
There's-
It's
So, I
the-
mean,
it's
wouldn't
the
our evidence,
absence of-
wouldn't our motion be to make it private? I mean, isn't it by almost default public because of the way it's been treated? I mean,
So, this conversation
No.
originated after the obvious, which is the
Right.
pillar moving, when, like just like somebody that has public, or has private property, we have property that we have the we have right of way, that we have evidence that it's belongs to the city of Garden City. We don't have evidence, that, well, not evidence, we don't have, this road, as far as we can find, the proof, the documentation that road is City of Garden City. We maintain it, there's no objection to continuing to maintain it operationally. The question becomes, something goes wrong with us operating on private property, we're probably exposed beyond what we wanted or ever intended, and it's not a problem until it is. So that's kind of what it boiled down to. I think the recommendations that after a couple months of digging through as many historical documents as the neighborhood could find kind of arrived at the same position that we were at the start, which is the commission's going to need to make a decision as to whether or not they want to take on the repair of these pillars that are private and, to our best estimate at this point in time, sit on private property. And two, do we want to try to correct this this inability to prove one way or another whose property this is? The city isn't looking to go out and acquire a road. That's not the point of this, never has been the point of this. The point of this is there's a lack of clarity, and whatever the neighborhood's intentions are, we'd like to accommodate that and be a partner in helping accommodate that, but we don't have a preference. I mean, from a staff side, we don't have a preference. It's wasn't our issue to start, isn't our issue now. We do believe we can be a party to help solve the problem.
One thing that,
I didn't hear all of that last statement. Did you say you're not responsible to make it a street? What did you say?
I said it was the absence of proof one way or the other at the beginning at the onset of this wasn't it wasn't our issue that we were dealing with then. And I don't believe that it's imperative that we solve that now. But if the neighborhood does have a solution that it wants to pursue, I think we can be a party to that. That's why I think the recommendations you lined out in your letter are exactly kind of the ones that are the same questions that, as a staff, we would ask the commission to give some direction on.
I know, as far as, like I said, our survey just meets out to our actual PIN property. So as far as like that, I just feel like I have no legal right to give something away that is somewhere said private to our street. Or I don't really claim it either, you know, so that's where another question that some of us have had too is, you know, then who does own that street? So it is a question that sometime we maybe not, it isn't imperative, I don't think, that has to be done now, but for future sales of our homes or the new neighbors that have just come in, there's a lot of confusion, so. We have gone, like I said, and looked at a lot of different entries and abstracts and records of prior commission meetings and things and have found, you know, different entries that have been in there.
So when it was damaged before, just a question was, did the city repair that pillar at that time?
Yes.
And so the other question, the follow-up to that is so in knowing where these are located, and it seems to indicate that if you're gonna repair them, that you would wanna move them, you know, a little bit out of harm's way. Is that something, is that correct?
Either that or put some protectors there.
Oh, I see, like a
pipe or
something.
something. One thing that we haven't addressed, I mean, it's gonna be about impossible to match that brick. You know, if you tear it down. So it's not gonna match exactly with the other one. So that's another little problem that,
I don't know what any of the rest of you think. I mean, we in our meeting, if it's fair to say that we kind of went through a lot of options ourselves too, you know, should we just, the damaged one, take it down? We had even talked about just hypothetically, you know, donating the plaque to the original Gillespie house, you know, if we did take it down, if we can't do anything with it, or should we just move them? I mean, yeah, we understand there's gonna be a lot of those things that won't match up or may not work out either. It's just,
yeah, probably on that end, I don't think the other end has ever had any
no,
problems.
because
have
they're
they?
back off quite a ways from the street.
One solution would be just to take both of them down on that east end. And
And
Does it-
Beth, you live right there where the other one is by the fire hydrant, so I don't know if you want to speak for.
The one pillar is in my front yard, and my fence has also been hit 3 times. So if you're gonna take the pillar down, are you gonna take my fence down?
No.
I feel like the fence is the only protection I have from the street in my house, because 3 times
are you
in.
talking about the east side?
Oh, yeah, 3
fence?
times in 9 years is a lot to
Yeah.
have your fence driven through. So I think the problem is more than the pillar on that center street, it's the speed at which people travel.
Yeah, it
in the
tends
middle
to-
of the night.
A lot of people come, you know, from where it be Walnut or whatever, and they just zip right through there, and so they do speed through there pretty quickly, so.
Okay,
Okay.
stand, please, come to the podium, please.
Where those pillars are on the east end, Ron went out and measured in Center Street, you know, so many feet, and we measured Gillespie. And those pillars are on the right-of-way to Center.
Oh,
And 6 inches from her fence is the line for Center Street. 6 inches east of her street, her fence. So, they're actually on the street right away from 2 directions. Because Gillespie starts on Center, in the middle of Center, so it comes through there also, so. That's pretty well easy to establish. But when Rosie's through, I have a paper too, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's just about all that I really wanted to say was, some of the things that we were thinking and looking ahead and just, you know, how we go. But the reason we had put in there, you know, maybe having the city attorney take a look at things too is because just to make this, you know, right and legal for all of us, you know, so that we do understand who claims that, and, who can say, that we want to dedicate that or not, I don't know how that's ever been done before, other than what I found in years past on documents, so, yeah.
Okay. You want to state your name?
Okay, my name is Marie Osterberg, and we live in the Gillespie house, and we lived there for 45 years.
Okay.
And I helped Rosie, and we both did a lot of research, and Ron did a lot of research too, so. I have a letter that I had sent to you all for your packets, and I'm sure you read that.
Yep.
And then I have another one here today. Do you want me to read it, or do you want him just to show this other letter?
Do you have it?
Yeah. It's on top of that bunch I just gave you.
Yeah, I don't think we have it up here.
No, not yet. Okay, well, it says, if
We've
you want me
got
just
it.
to read it. It says Gillespie Street Place is an old street seemingly without the official paperwork needed for legality. The earliest plat of this area was in 1886. References have been made and passed down regarding this being a city street for public use throughout the years. The pillars also add uniqueness and a historical aspect to this neighborhood. Lore about the private street with the pillars proved to be a different story. It was assumed that Mr. Gillespie was responsible for keeping the ownership, therefore the private standing. With pillars to prove it, was his street, but his family in later years says otherwise. Mr. Gillespie owned all the land around his home. Some fields planted in alfalfa served as air conditioning with a cool, damp breeze blowing from the south. In 1927, the area we call Gardendale was sold to two developers for a housing development. The developers erected these 4 pillars on the ends of the street at this time, and this was most likely for goodwill and prestige to include Gillespie Street in their development. Whether Gillespie Place became private or not is still a question being asked today. The development failed and Gillespie Gardens was forgotten except for the pillars which remained on our street. After several transactions, the property abutting Gillespie Place on the southwest side of the street became houses, but we have come to know them as neighbors. And their land was also platted down there on that side of the street. As an interesting example of the plentiful documents found, Marie and Ron's property was sold by Mr. Gillespie to the next owners with the boundaries abutting the street, not including the street. So that property has never gone to the middle of the street. Mm-hmm. And Rosie's hasn't either, she said. So when Mr. Gillespie mortgaged his properties in the 30s, it specifically excludes Gillespie Street as part of that mortgage, which would mean he did not have control of it. And the questions we have today, do we own to the middle of the street? Some might say yes, and some might say no. We didn't find all the answers in our search. Our request is to ask the city to use your resources to determine who does and doesn't own to the middle of the street. Then legalize the public use and keep the pillars. At this time, the things which matter the most is the city has maintained the street as public since the late 20s. Do you have documents to say otherwise? What dates does the city think Gillespie Place was private? Plus, what documentation was required for this option? Back in the founding years of our cities, what requirements did it take to be a public street? Were they different than they are now? Maybe they didn't need something, just his word of mouth, because his family says he gave this to the city. And we'll share any documents we found for you all if you would like them, but we did not bring them all. There's too many of them. And Ron has a paper to show. And then we'll take more.
My name is Ron Osterberg. Marie and I have lived in the original Gillespie house for 45 years. And the area that this takes in portions of lots 5 and 6 of Smith's addition to Garden City. We've looked at a lot of records at the courthouse, and since 1925, there have been recorded for record many deeds and mortgages for property in this area that are somewhat misleading and may contain some errors. Some warranty deeds and mortgages executed by Mr. Gillespie since 1925 omitted any property lying in the area of Gillespie Drive or Place or Avenue, whatever you want to call it. Marie went through a bunch of the city clerk's records of the Garden City Commission meeting, and I've listed these out on this letter. January 28, 1931, there was a city resolution to curb and gutter Gillespie Drive. On July the 8th, 1931, there was an ordinance passed to curb and gutter Gillespie Drive. On September 21st, 1932, there was a petition to pave Gillespie Drive. On September 23rd, there was an ordinance passed to pave Gillespie Drive. On October the 5th, 1932, bonds were approved for paving Gillespie Drive. On December 28, 1932, an ordinance for assessment on curb and gutter for Gillespie Drive was passed. On October the 4th, 1933, order to issue bonds for Gillespie Drive improvements. On November the 22nd, 1933, issued bonds for Gillespie Drive improvements. So it shows quite a bit of the city involvement over that period of time, and maybe a lot of you don't remember. I remember a little bit of the last of the 30s as a young child, but those were not good times. Anyway, in my opinion, when considering the uncertainty of property ownership of Gillespie Drive, as well as the city's involvement in public usage, the best resolution could likely involve adjoining property owners to execute quitclaim deeds to Garden City regarding the property owner's rights to Gillespie Drive. And by the way, as Marie said, the columns at the east end of Gillespie Drive are actually situated within the 60-foot area of Center Street.
And we would fully agree, have since the beginning, that if there was going to be clarity on this, I mean, because at the end of the day, you've got to have clarity. We can try to sleuth over 120 years how it got to this point, but if there's no evidence, the only way you can get to that is to take a legal action, so that the one place where it matters to have documentation, that record can get recorded there. I think Randy can do it. I think that's their request, kind of to move this thing forward, decide what you want on the pillars, but I think Randy can easily accomplish what it sounds to me like most of the neighborhood wants.
Would it require all of the neighborhood, Randy, to approve, or the quitclaim deeds, or just a majority of the neighborhood?
Well, we need all property owners that have any property abutting the road to quitclaim any and all interest in the property to the city. But we have not looked at it at all, so that may be the solution.
Right.
It may be a quiet title action undertaken by the city, naming all property owners, and the court would clean up any interest involved. Because there may be some heirs out there that have an interest that don't live on those properties, and we'd have to get those approvals too.
And I think that their original letter for the packet, it kind of says, pass this off to the city attorney to figure out what the answer is. Our recommendation.
So I'm leaving. No,
Kind of our advice would be to pass this off to him. You don't have to do it right now.
All right.
What you want me to do,
Yeah.
we'll take care of it. So.
I think that'd be the best solution, to try to have Randy come back with that.
And I would like to introduce our neighbors that we have here. And we have a letter from the sisters who couldn't be here today.
Right.
We have a letter from Kevin Campbell, who couldn't be here today, and a letter from Quentin Hope, who couldn't be here today, but is in town and would be willing to speak with you all. he's gonna try to find some documents of his dad's. And, then Amy, we weren't sure she was coming, so we have a letter from her also in the Nolan house.
Oh, yeah.
And this is, would you introduce yourself?
Michelle Turner, representing Linda Price.
Yeah. And the Christensen's and Amy Trace right here. They just moved into Nolan's house.
Oh, yeah.
And Beth down here, who lives on the corner
Right.
with one of the pillars.
By the pillar, yes. By the pillar with the fence.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll definitely look into this and have our attorney, city attorney.
Yeah, it would be nice to not say, well, there's no legal documentation on the
Right.
street, because, as I said, we don't even own it,
Right.
neither does some of the others, so.
So,
All right,
So-
thank you for coming, and we appreciate that.
so once that decided, so when that, would that determine how we'd move forward with the pillar? Is
I
that what
think-
we're saying is,
If it's on our property, I think we'd probably.
then we
have
would
to
move forward,
repair
okay.
it, Which it sounds
Do
like
we
it
need to
is.
do a motion to direct the city attorney to do that?
I don't think so. Just direct him.
Okay.
Yeah, and if nobody's ever seen it, here's a plat from 1886, this is what they look like, not
Uh-huh.
much detail.
Wow. Yeah.
Dug out
Times
a lot
have
of it.
changed. All right, well, we thanks for taking the time to bring us up to date on this issue.
I guess
Thank you.
if it becomes a public street, then those pillars become the city's responsibility then,
Exactly
right?
right.
Is that correct?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, the rights of way aren't universal sizes, yeah, so that would be part of it. I would say there's still a policy question if like you work out, you know, where the right of way stops and starts and all that's worked out, and the pillars end up on clearly to be
In our
in
right
your
of way.
right of way, then you have a decision to make to repair and maintain those or to remove them.
Well, and I guess if the previous commission approved repairing,
Curb and gutter.
no.
Well, they repaired it
When-
once
one of-
already,
they-
so.
Yeah.
A previous commission approved repairing it already. I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to, but I mean, and I was trying to go back to see if I could find.
My memory
what
of
was
that
on
is that we had actually just employed,
I was trying to go back to see if I could find in minutes to, I know it got approved and the city did repair it, but it's,
One thing you're gonna have to look at, if it becomes public sidewalk versus private sidewalk,
See, it's
then
in
the
the way.
city has responsibility to keep those sidewalks free for
Right, it's in the
ADA.
way, yeah.
So that could affect those pillars in the future.
right.
And
Or where
so-
they're located. so-
Where they're located, so.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Yeah, maybe.
She didn't think you would take that one.
Did you fall asleep?
Oh, you probably did extra work.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
12A, this is next.
Item 12A, the governing body is asked to consider and approve participation in the 2020 Light Up Navajo project. Mike?
Yes, good afternoon again, Mayor and Commissioners. In the spring of 2019, the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority partnered with the American Power Association, which you're a member of, to connect Navajo homes located on the reservation located in the Four Corners area of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. The reservation down there has never had electricity, and there's many homes down there that still don't have electricity, so they partnered with the APPA to try to get utilities to come down and help build new power lines in and light them up. In 2019, it was a very successful program. They resulted in 233 additional homes being electrified. So based upon that 2019 partnership, the the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority wants to do it again in 2020. And in this time, they've asked the state of Kansas if we had anybody that would want to participate in this assistance to help light that up. So through the Kansas Municipal Utilities Group, which we're a member of, they asked if we had an interest to participate. We said, yes, we're definitely interested in participating. If it's possible, we would need to get permission from the elected officials to make sure everything was okay and determining what the costs could be and insurance, all that stuff, et cetera. So we're here today to request permission to participate in this Light Up Navajo 2. It's about 550 miles away from Garden City. They would tell us what we would send or not send if we could. And we initially said that we would send 1 journeyman lineman, 2 apprentices, a 4-wheel drive pickup truck that carried most of their tools, and a small bucket truck. Most of the area is not. You can't get a bucket truck to it. Most of it's climbing, so we would only send qualified people that had good climbing skills. First thing we did, of course, Cliff, we asked the crew if they were interested in doing such a thing, and they immediately said, "Oh, absolutely, we'll go help any way we can."
How long would this be?
You can be there for 2 weeks at the most. We would, if you give us permission, we would register ourselves, and then they would tell us whether we were even accepted or not. We may not be accepted, but the most we could be there would be for a 2-week period, and they would tell us how long we may be. They may partner Garden City with another Kansas utility, and then we would work together to go down there and do that. You know, it's hard to really estimate how much it would cost, but trying to figure overtime that would be involved more than likely, and the fuel costs, probably around $15,000 is what it would be an impact to the electric fund. And if you allow us to move forward and we're approved, then we would work with Melinda to try to get that put in our 2020 budget.
So the employees would just they would still be on the clock when they're working there, and then so that would, because I'm making sure if they get injured, so our workers' comp would extend to them while they're there, and so, okay.
Yeah, all of our workers' comp would be extended. We have to make all other expenses, you know, that we normally would pay for if they were working here in town. We cover all of those. The tribal nation will cover housing and meals, and they may be in a hotel. They may not necessarily be in a hotel. They may be out in a smaller area. But well, no, not a tent. They said no tents would be there, but
I think this sounds like a really cool professional development and community engagement project. I mean, I see there's a lot of value here, you know, despite the cost.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the registration and participation in the Light Up Navajo 2 project in 2020.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the participation in the 2020 Light Up Navajo project. Is there any further discussion?
No, I'm glad your crew is excited about participating. And I think Dr. Calvin and Phyllis Bigler, actually, this is the area that they worked in for many years, doing a lot of, you know, indigent service for free. So I think it's a great part of history. So, yep.
Okay, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item 12B, the governing body is asked to consider and approve the 2019 Southwest Kansas Coalition legislative agenda. Jennifer?
Mayor and Commissioners, you were asking a couple meetings ago how our SKC meeting went down in Liberal. This is the product of that meeting that we had. You will notice that this document grew a little bit. It used to be basically a front and back page, and the reason that we had gone to that was for the ease of if you were going to visit one of the people that we were asking to follow this or to implement this, that it was very easy for them to keep, very easy for them to reference. But when we got together in Liberal, one of the discussions we had is that there were a couple areas, one of those being highways, one of those being immigration, one of those being education, that they needed just a little bit more information, that they needed to be a little more detailed, or that they needed to identify, in regards to highways, they needed to identify specific projects so that we could work towards kind of a goal and maybe get something accomplished. And so we did that. We made the immigration portion
more specific, I believe, in regards to what we see as an inroad or as what we see as an avenue to legal immigration, and then kind of what we would like to see them do. Additionally, under highways, we talked about, and Matt actually got together with KDOT so that we could get a specific language put in here, and the group kind of talked about what would be most important to us, and so we tried to tailor this language to fit those needs. And then lastly, under education, that portion mostly was rewritten by Dodge City as they're doing their campaign towards creating the regional education center, and so we included that information there. And so that's what made it a little bit longer. We still think it's a very valuable document, and we think overall it'll be easy for them to handle. If you have any changes, they will have to go back, that come out of this meeting, they will have to go back to the entire group to have them changed, and before it will be something that we can use, all three commissions, Dodge, Garden, and Liberal, have to approve. The hope is that all three commissions will approve them before the upcoming SKC trip to DC, which is on November 11th and 12th.
I make a motion, we approve the 2019 SKC legislative agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2019 SKC legislative agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I think we're ready for 12C, the consent agenda. If approved, it would be items C1 through 4.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda C1 through 4.
Is there a second? I'll second.
I do have a question on an item item 3, where it talks about the GEO bond for 2020. And I don't know, and I'm sorry, Melinda, I was gonna ask this earlier, but it talked about moving the cost of that $1 million. Shoot, I'm trying to get to my note. It talked about that, using the GEO bonds to fund that portion of the expansion of Kansas Avenue. Was that already in our budget plan, or do we, in our GEO bond, or how much room do we have in that?
We have not budgeted for that yet in 2020. That'll be coming up.
So that could be part of that.
It'll be mainly a 2021 budget decision.
Okay.
It'll be a 2020 project, but a 2021 GEO bond.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda C1 through 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor and Commissioners, if it's not too much trouble, there was an item that I wanted to add to the manager's report, just an update on some complaints that we had received on parking. So if you don't mind, if I could give you an update on that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can call up the... Apologize, I'm not going to be able to put it on the screen, but I'll read it anyways. On the morning of Friday, September 18th, 2019, I received an email from Lorenzo Villa through the website's email contact link asking if the city took code complaints anymore because attempts to use the website's complaint system failed. The email indicated a code concern at 801 Cedar related to a construction project and blocked sidewalks on the 2700, two complaints, 801 Cedar related to a construction project, and another complaint, blocked sidewalks on the 2700 block of Belmont Drive. I forwarded the code issues to the Neighborhood and Development Services Office and the issue with respect to the website to Information Technology and Communications Department. Both staffs responded to the concerns that day. The website link was resolved by routing emails away from expired email addresses. The Neighborhood and Development Services dispatched a building inspector to 801 Cedar, where the code and then a code inspector to the 2700 block of Belmont Drive. The building inspector met with the contractor of the project at 801 Cedar, who agreed to put up a construction fence around an open basement hole and an unfinished project until such time as the hole was no longer open. Toward the end of the day, Neighborhood and Development Services sent the complaint of the 2700 block of Belmont to the police department because it was determined correctly that this type of vehicle violation is under the portion of the code which they enforce by local adoption of the state's STO. The police department has patrolled the area and has encouraged compliance with the code and/or enforced violations and when they were observed. Nonetheless, violations have continued to occur in this area, which has been understandably frustrating to Mr. Villa and others who wish to see sidewalks along this arterial corridor cleared and navigable as required by state law. So Belmont Drive in this area, as many of you are probably familiar, Mary Street North goes to Bernadine Sitz Intermediate Center. So heavily trafficked by vehicles and pedestrians, many of those pedestrians children. On the evening of Saturday, October 12th, since September 18th, Mr. Villa has continued to contact Garden City Police Department and has supplied photos and videos of the violations. And there's email strings attached with that correspondence and those pictures. On the evening of Saturday, October 12th, Mr. Villa contacted me regarding his complaints and his observations that the city or GCPD had taken no action on his complaints. I offered to Mr. Villa a public accounting for the actions taken by the city and GCPD at the regular meeting of the City Commission on October 15th. This memo serves, and this update serves that purpose and has been shared with Mr. Villa directly. The police department reports the following activities related to the topic. Officers responded to the parking complaints reported by Mr. Villa on September 21st and found that there were that the vehicles were moved prior to the officers' arrival. On September 24th, GCPD PIO Sergeant Urtiaga posted educational videos on social media regarding parking on the sidewalks. Officers also responded on this date to parking complaints reported by Mr. Villa and found that the vehicles were moved prior to the officers' arrival. On September 25th, officers responded to the area and found the following violations in the following locations. 2709 Belmont, an SUV was parked on the sidewalk and cited. 2709 Belmont, a pickup truck was chalked and marked for tow. 2800 Belmont, a warning was given as the owner moved the vehicle promptly. 1100 Labrador, a vehicle was chalked and marked for tow. 2700 Rock, 2 vehicles were chalked and marked for tow. 2600 Belmont, vehicle had expired tags and the vehicle was moved by the owner. Officers responded on September 28th to parking complaints reported by Mr. Villa and found that the vehicles were moved prior to the officers' arrival. Officers patrolled the area on October 12th and 13th and reported that no violations were observed. On the morning of October 14th, officers responded and cited a camper blocking the sidewalk at 2703 Belmont. They reported no other violations on the morning of October 15th in the remainder of the area. Officers have made attempts on at least 2 occasions to speak to someone at the residence of 2709 Belmont to include when the citation was issued, but have had no contact. During the weeks of September 22nd through October 5th, GCPD officers conducted a campaign focusing on parking violations citywide. And the following is kind of a collection of their activity. 11 vehicles were chalked for tow, 30 citations issued, 14 no action taken, 46 warnings, and 1 vehicle towed. The GCPD will continue to enforce parking violations that officers observe, those reported to us from code enforcement in the community. The GCPD will also continue to push public education material using GCPD and City of Garden City's social media, website, print, and Channel 8 communication tools. Finally, all city communication will encourage anyone who sees a violation of this law to report it. The reporting method that offers the most rapid response is to call 276-1300. This is the police department's non-emergency number and goes directly to 911 dispatchers after hours. This is an appropriate call for this number any time of day. Email to city staff directly or via the website is also useful. However, it is vulnerable to delays related to the other activities of the individuals being emailed. As I mentioned, there's all the correspondence on this issue since September 19th or September 18th available for your review. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thanks. Any commissioner reports, I guess, the next. Commissioner Cessna.
Attended the city's United Way kickoff event. It was very successful, and I know Sealand gave us United Way 2020 campaign pledge forms, so Be sure to fill those out. Good pre-meeting. Also great to see the Garden City Police Department attend the child's birthday party and help that. It's good PR for our law enforcement officers. It's great to help out. Maybe we can, growing our own there, maybe, looks like she wants to become an officer, so hopefully later on. And then I know last week was National Fire Safety Week, and the fire department was out at numerous schools and had a number of tours of the fire department and did a lot of presentations. So it was great to see them out and about and showing our students how to be safe and, during that week. So, and they're out in our schools a lot too, but just that week was more promotion last week. So, and then the utilities department had a scavenger hunt contest that somebody won. So that was kind of a neat idea for the utilities week. So great to see that. And that's all I've got.
Okay, Commissioner Dick?
With the pre-meeting, it was good to see the Resist kids out and talked about some good topics, and I was glad that they had a really good turnout for that. The other thing was just got back from the Kansas League of Municipalities annual conference. It was really good. Heard Secretary Toland, Lieutenant Governor, some other good topics. Talked to a lot of city officials from around the state, and it was a really useful time.
Very good. Commissioner Unruh?
So I also want to say thank you to the Resist Group and then also all of the Live Old Finney County and also the Community Health Advisory Board. It sounds like you're doing some really impactful and very thoughtful work. You're really thinking through a lot, so I really appreciated that. I also was able to attend the Kansas League of Municipalities Conference and attended one of the sessions I would like to, and I want to talk to our reigning City Clerk of the Year, Celine Hurtado. One of them was the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and they did, Amanda, and I can't remember her last name, she's the lead counsel there at the league, but she did an excellent presentation on the Kansas Open Meetings Act. One thing that she really encouraged a lot of us for any type of, when city staff emails commissioners, to use blind carbon copies so we don't accidentally reply all. Right. And I thought that was a really good, because I have a tendency, I have to think, oh wait, you were not supposed to reply all. So I did think that was something very simple, but it's also a way to keep us out of trouble. I do think hosting that Kansas Open Meetings Act, having that training would be also valuable for other elected officials, especially since elections are coming up. But some really great information about executive session especially. So I just want to encourage to reach out to the league, and I've talked to them about hopefully bringing that training out. I was able to step into the economic development portion of the training. I'll tell you, our Economic Development Corporation, Finney County, is doing incredible, and they could have and should have written maybe the presentation. And I just want to say kudos to the Finney County Economic Development Corporation for all of the things they're doing for our community. It really, a lot of the things they're talking about, our Economic Development Corporation does, and then probably teaches other people how to do. The other thing at the conference, I did encourage KTAG, even though we don't have any interstates yet. 83 will be that one day, but I won't be around.
In your lifetime?
Yeah, not my lifetime. But, really to come out and really present KTAG and some of those opportunities that they sometimes think that we would not be interested in, especially having someone there that spoke Spanish. They did not have anyone there. I said, do you have anything in Spanish or that? And they didn't really think about that would be important, but I think that would be something to bring out here to really bring attention. So that's all. I just wanted to say thank you. That I'm excited about tonight's forum. I'm going to be in attendance, and so I'm looking forward to all of the candidates speaking, and then this whole week is a busy week. I know evenings are busy, but it's really worth your time to come out and hear candidates speak. So tonight's the city candidates, and I think, is it Thursday?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. We're located right here in our very own. I would say get here early, because, I think it's going to be standing room only, but I'm excited about coming tonight and hearing from the candidates.
Okay, Commissioner Burns.
Yeah, so, yes, today is the last day to register to vote in the November election. And in addition to all of the elected offices, it's also important to remember that there's going to be the renewal of the county sales tax to the countywide sales tax to support road projects and building projects. And so that's something I think everyone needs to weigh in on. And I do hope that folks take a look at pre-meeting information, and I think it's important that we talk about the pre-meetings at this time, because there's a lot of important policy questions that I think really do concern the community. I think this morning's meeting and talking about tobacco-free property, tobacco-free parks, those kind of things, those are policy issues that you're going to see at the state level, maybe even at the federal level, as we're talking about vaping, and right here at home. And I would love to hear some input about what people think about that. I have very clear point of view about how I feel about using tobacco and tobacco products in public spaces, and that's informed from my personal experience, my professional experience, but others have other good arguments. Commissioner Dick and I had a very nice conversation. It was not an infraction of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. We were just talking about the information. And it's important to share those perspectives, and I would invite the community to do so. And I think the first step in doing that is obviously participating in the election. So I encourage everyone, you've still got time to get to the county office and register if you haven't already. Thank you.
Well, I too enjoyed the pre-meeting and learned a lot about e-cigarettes and what they look like and handled them and a few other things. I was going to mention the forum tonight, 6 o'clock. Will we have overflow in the other room? So there'll be plenty of room for everybody, either in this room or in the big room next door. Also, the new 2020 profile will be handed out tomorrow morning for the first time, and I encourage you to take a few extra copies of those and pass them out to people. It really answers a lot of questions. Plus, encourage people to one thing that I'm going to mention tomorrow is to encourage people to thank businesses that are existing in the city, and I think that's real important. I tried to do that this year, and I think sometimes we kind of forget about that, and so encourage you to do that, and we'll see you in the morning, except for Mr. Burns.
Right.
Okay. That's all I have. Anything else? We're adjourned at 2:32.